Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you. Tonight, I was able to watch the Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes WWE Rivalries. I guess you can say special or documentary or whatever the heck we're going to call these things. And honestly, when I watched the Austin versus McMahon one, I thought that it was good, but this show really was great. I mean, I sort of knocked the Austin versus McMahon one because I was sort of saying, why is this on the WWE Network and not a WWE DVD release? This is easily something that was very, very good that, once I'm done with it, especially after tonight watching Flair versus Dusty, I want to watch these damn matches. And I love the WWE Network, but it's not the best thing if you just want to watch just watch a match. It's very hard to find just settings of just going, I want to watch, Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes from, Starrcade 1985. Just bam, 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 bam. Skip through and you just got to find that. I have to hold the fast forward down. The screen goes black. And I'm just not able to do it. I wish that today I would have went out to Best Buy, came home and had the physical copy of WWE Rivalries, Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair in my hand. I've been able to just put it in there. That's the one thing that I think that the WWE Network lacks that I like the WWE DVDs for. Basically because if you want to watch the best of Dusty Rhodes, you can go in there and watch the best matches. They have them all on there, whether if it's on WWE pay-per-views or WCW pay-per-views. You can go through and you can find them match by match, but you can't just click a button and watch them. If you go over and you grab your best of Dusty Rhodes DVD and you put in disc 2 or disc 3, you can watch those matches in order, and that's the one thing I really like about those if you're sitting down and you want to watch them. Now, I know I've got 3 different Ric Flair best of sets, and I've got one Dusty Rhodes set. I've got the best of WCW over there. I've got there's a bunch of them, and I could there's not many of these matches because basically Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair were kept apart, much like Rock versus Austin were back in the day. I can watch them, but I just don't want to have to go through all that work. I wish I could just put it in there. I know I'm following in the shoes of Jim Nye, basically having a beef with the network. But this is one of my only beefs is that I wish some of these things that were on the network were on there for easier viewing. I wish the fast forward thing would work, and the update that they did to it just the other day before the ECW special, it makes it a lot better. So those are the really only 2 beefs that I wish I had on there. I wish this wasn't on the network, and I wish it was on a physical copy DVD that I can go a bit, but I thought this was honestly really, really good. This was so good that about 15 minutes in, I called Jim, and I wanted to know if he was watching this or if he was going to watch this. It was something that if he didn't know about it, I wanted to be the one person to tell him. He said that he had watched it just a little bit today, and he said that he had to take a nap before he had to go back to work because he works nights. He talks about that a lot in his videos. I told him, I said, please watch this and give a review on this, because honestly, your review is going to be a whole lot better than mine. You're the NWA freak, knowing all about Flair, all about Dusty Rhodes. When I wanted to know more about Tully Blanchard, I went to you, and you basically made a video giving me a history lesson, and it's one of my favorite videos that you've ever made out there. Just talking about how good Tully was and how great he could have been, and maybe he didn't reach the potential that was there. But this special basically started with the early trainings of Ric Flair, being a standout college football player and collegiate wrestler, basically turning that into going with a professional wrestling background. Dusty Rhodes had already started wrestling. He's got some years on Rick, and basically he was coming up as a tag team. He split off. He went down to Florida and he started becoming the main guy that was there. And then basically it was the NWA coming together, bringing all of the territories together, basically to that finally brought Dusty and Flair together. One thing that was about it was that Ric Flair got into wrestling. His first name was Rambling Ricky Rhodes. Just mainly because he loved Dusty so much that he wanted to follow in his footsteps, and he thought by giving himself the last name of Rhodes would be better. Finally, somebody talked him into becoming, Flair. Ric Flair. It rolls off the tongue so much better. It's much like his real natural name, and Rick, took to wrestling and was great. And, the one thing that Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes did better than anybody else was basically promos. And promos on each other. It mainly built up to make you want to see this fight more than actually seeing the fight. Them being able to talk about, Rick, whether if he was talking about how much money he had or how much money he was going to make, what kind of, suit he was wearing or what kind of shoes he had. Basically, he was just saying that he was the best professional wrestler in the world. He acted, he dressed the part, he flew on private jets that he owned, while Dusty Rhodes was the guy that was trying to become your best friend. He wanted to let you know that he was a professional wrestler, and he was going out there and he was fighting the fight. He was fighting the fight for you. He didn't need anything special. He basically just wore your average plain Jane t-shirt. He didn't have El Generico on his, but he wore blue jeans, he wore cowboy boots, he wore just a normal trucker's hat. He trucked on down the road, hit the towns, going town by town. He'd kiss the fat girls, he'd hug all the babies, whatever it took, to get over. He was that guy. And Dusty was great at that. He didn't have, the greatest physical appearance. Dusty Rhodes was 300 pounds plus. He had the man titties flopping around as he moved throughout the ring. But he had a connection with the people. He had soul. He had basically a he had movement in the ring that made sense. That when he sold, you could tell he was selling, and he was like the giant redwood that was about to fall. When he got fired up, you got fired up with him. He was a guy that you just really felt what was going on, and through this series of matches, you see basically how they finally came together at Starrcade in Greensboro. And their match was so big, and so many people wanted to see it. And basically, if you wanted to go see wrestling back in the day, you mainly did walk-ups, where you just walked up to the window and bought a ticket. And so many people thought they were going to go to Greensboro and be able to buy this ticket to be able to see this match that was so big that basically they were shutting down freeways. The cops were setting up basically stopping ramps, driving into Greensboro, that they weren't letting anybody in. This is a 20,000 seat arena that was going to host Starrcade, that easily they could have put 100,000 people in. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go put in your the Rise and Fall of WCW, and they've got footage of all of this. And it's one of the best things they ever did, was basically showing how big this one match was, and how many people wanted to see it, to see the Common Man become the NWA champion. And basically, they played it up as, this was one match, and then they saved it all the way into the next year. They feuded, but, they kept them apart for a good deal of it, all the way into getting to the next Starrcade. After that one, basically they were saying, Tide took their turns, or basically they went their different directions, and it ended up being where Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes were basically both baby faces at the same time, where basically Ric Flair was getting beat down by the Russians so bad that Dusty Rhodes came to save Ric Flair inside of a steel cage, chasing the Russians off. And basically during this, Ric Flair motioned to the back for his cousins, the Andersons, to come running out of the back. This was the start and birth of the Four Horsemen, where they attacked Dusty Rhodes and they beat him down inside of the cage. The attack was so bad that it started a full-on riot inside of the arena, where basically the fans swarmed to the ring. They were trying to climb into the steel cage to beat down the Horsemen themselves for breaking the leg of Dusty Rhodes. They wouldn't let the Four Horsemen leave through the doors of the cage, and basically it took them an hour once the show was all done. They culminated this whole thing up basically with getting Flair and Dusty all the way to the Great American Bash, where basically, you know, Dusty Rhodes was able to beat his nemesis Ric Flair, and they were basically saying he was able to go out on top as the champion. It had been 10 years between his last NWA championship reign, and you know, it was like that crowning jewel moment in Dusty's career that was so big for him. Flair and Dusty was easily one of the best rivalries of all time. This was a great rivalry to put on this show. I don't know if they made a Rivalries DVD that was Flair versus Dusty, if it would really sell, but a lot of the NWA, a lot of WCW stuff has really surprised them when they released it. The last one was the WCW War Games set that came out. That was a great set. That first match alone is well worth the price of the DVD. If you got to buy it for $10, $15, $20, I promise you that first Starrcade match on disc 1, you pop that in, it's going to be well worth the money that you paid for that whole set. Forget disc 2, just basically take disc 2 out of the disc and throw it out the window. You don't need it. That's basically when WCW went downhill, and they destroyed War Games near the end, but every match on that first one is really, really good. Thank God, basically, that, you know, they didn't keep going after the Great American Bash. The one thing that I started thinking about this was, please don't talk about 2001. Please don't talk about 2001. And basically, WCW at the end was throwing anything up against the wall, trying to make anything work, to try and get people back to watching WCW and trying, you know, breathe breath into this, you know, this company that was dying. And in 2001, they brought back Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair as a rivalry on television that was mainly built around Jeff Jarrett going up against Dustin Rhodes at the time, but they were using Flair and Dusty. They worked a tag team match against each other. I believe it was on a pay-per-view where the losers had to basically kiss the ass. I don't remember if it was just a kiss my ass match, and then it ended up being a kiss un-ass match where they had to kiss the back of a donkey. But this was bad. Ric Flair did a run-in dressed up in disguise. I think this is the one where he comes down as a drag queen, if I can remember right. But I hate remembering bad Ric Flair, and especially I hate remembering bad Dusty Rhodes, like when he joined the NWO, which apparently was for no reason at all. I know they were trying to get heat on the NWO, but for him to join, just basically trying to make the older generation hate the NWO even more because they took their legend away from them, it made no sense. It almost was like Dusty just dying for one last chance at being popular again. I have no clue. But Flair versus Dusty was one of the most popular rivalries of all time. It ended at probably about 1988. It was sort of like when Hogan and Flair were in the same place at the same time. I'm trying to remember. Flair was in WWF in like 1991. And Dusty was there in like 1990, I think. So I don't think that lined up. I was trying to think of why McMahon didn't milk Dusty versus Flair one time. But I think that, basically when Dusty went back is when Flair left. And that's why they were on different pages at a different time. But make sure you go out of your way. This is way better than Austin versus McMahon. I promise you that you're going to love this. This was good stuff. 2 thumbs up from Stevie Breach on the WWE Network. Rivalries, Dusty versus Flair. Make sure you go out of the way. I wish that this was a real DVD that I can go out to Best Buy and buy tomorrow. Because I would love to sit down and watch all of these Dusty versus Flair matches that they talked about tonight. Good stuff, guys.